The impact of war on ancient Greek society. War was a constant presence in the lives of the ancient Greeks, shaping their society, values, and identities. From the wars against Persia to the prolonged and devastating Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, conflict affected every aspect of Greek life. These wars not only redrew the political map, but also left deep imprints on the culture, economy, family life, and spiritual beliefs of Greek society. The impact of war, particularly the Peloponnesian War, was profound, transforming the Greek world in ways that would resonate for generations. Part 1. The shift in Greek alliances and political landscape. The political structure of Greece, once a collection of loosely aligned city-states, became deeply polarized as conflicts like the Peloponnesian War forced states to take sides. City-states either aligned with Athens and the Delian League or Sparta and the Peloponnesian League, leading to increased militarization and a breakdown of traditional alliances. The Peloponnesian War forced Greek city-states to choose between two powerful, opposing sides, transforming allies into enemies and deepening divisions that would last long after the conflict ended. For smaller city-states, the pressure to align with one side or the other often meant compromising their autonomy. In many cases, these city-states became mere pawns in the power struggles between Athens and Sparta. The polarization not only strained political alliances, but also fractured the sense of pan-Hellenic identity that had united Greece during the Persian Wars. As a result of the war, once great city-states, particularly Athens, saw their influence and power diminish. The political map of Greece was reshaped, setting the stage for future conflicts and the eventual rise of Macedon under Philip II and Alexander the Great. War had sown seeds of distrust and rivalry across the Greek world, weakening the independent Greek city-states and leaving them vulnerable to conquest. Part 2. Economic devastation and displacement. The economic toll of war was significant, particularly for the agrarian-based economies of Greece. Fields were ravaged, trade routes were disrupted, and cities were repeatedly sieged, leaving behind widespread poverty and destruction. Athens, a major trading hub, was especially affected. The prolonged nature of the Peloponnesian War strained Athenian resources, and the constant need for supplies and shipbuilding left the city in deep debt. The final defeat of Athens led to the dismantling of its empire, effectively cutting off the tributes from allies that had supported its economy. War also brought about widespread displacement. As armies moved across Greece, families fled to fortified cities, leaving behind their homes, farms, and livelihoods. Refugees, orphans, and displaced populations became a common sight in the Greek world, straining the resources of urban centers like Athens. The societal structure, once based on small, self-sustaining communities, struggled to support the influx of displaced individuals. In addition, the labor force was significantly impacted. Many men were conscripted to fight, leaving women, elderly people, and children to manage farms and businesses. The absence of men affected agricultural output, leading to food shortages and increasing the reliance on imported grain, particularly in Athens. With its economy weakened and dependency on imports heightened, Greek society became more fragile and susceptible to external influences. Part 3. Changes in family life and gender roles. The extended periods of warfare had profound effects on family life in ancient Greece. The absence of men in wartime shifted traditional gender roles, as women took on responsibilities that had traditionally been the domain of men. In cities like Athens, where women were generally confined to the domestic sphere, the prolonged nature of the Peloponnesian War meant that they had to manage households, finances, and sometimes even participate in small-scale trade to sustain their families. In Sparta, where women already enjoyed more freedom and autonomy due to the militaristic nature of society, their roles became even more significant. With most Spartan men engaged in warfare or military training, Spartan women managed estates and controlled property, making them vital to the stability of Spartan society. The war, therefore, emphasized and expanded the influence of Spartan women, further distinguishing them from their counterparts in other Greek city-states. Additionally, the toll of the war created a generation of orphans and widows, leaving many families without male heirs to inherit property or provide support. In response, some Greek states began to loosen restrictions on women's inheritance rights, allowing them to maintain the family estate in the absence of a male heir. This shift, while limited, marked a subtle change in societal views on women's roles and their ability to contribute to family and community life during times of crisis. Part 4. Cultural and Intellectual Response to War. The brutal realities of the Peloponnesian War inspired a profound cultural and intellectual response. The tragedies of Euripides and Sophocles reflected the despair, loss, and moral ambiguity brought about by war. Plays like Euripides' The Trojan Women depicted the suffering of war's victims, particularly women, who bore the emotional and social consequences of their husbands' and sons' deaths. These tragedies resonated deeply with audiences who had witnessed or experienced the ravages of war firsthand. Philosophers like Socrates also emerged during this period, challenging the accepted norms and values of society. Socrates questioned the morality of war and the motivations behind Athens' imperial ambitions, emphasizing the importance of ethical behavior and self-reflection. His teachings and dialogues with Athenian citizens encouraged a spirit of critical inquiry that laid the foundations for Western philosophy. Socrates' questioning of traditional values, which often brought him into conflict with Athenian authorities, reflected the disillusionment and introspection that war had sparked within Greek society. The historical writings of Thucydides also emerged from this context. His History of the Peloponnesian War provided a detailed, realistic account of the war, analyzing its causes, events, and consequences with a critical eye. Thucydides' work differed from previous historical accounts in its focus on human motivations and the role of power and ambition in shaping events. His account served as both a record and a warning, highlighting the dangers of unchecked ambition, hubris, and the brutal nature of human conflict. Part 5. The Spiritual Impact and Religious Practices. War shook the spiritual foundations of Greek society. Many Greeks, facing relentless conflict, began to question the favor of the gods and their role in human affairs. The devastating plague that struck Athens early in the Peloponnesian War, killing thousands, including Pericles, led many to doubt their gods' protection and benevolence. The suffering brought by war and plague forced people to reevaluate their beliefs, leading some to question the traditional pantheon or explore alternative religious practices. During this period, oracles and divinations became more prominent as people sought answers and guidance in uncertain times. The Oracle of Delphi, long a revered source of divine insight, was frequently consulted by both Athens and Sparta for guidance in their military decisions. The reliance on oracles underscored the desperation and fear that permeated society, as Greeks turned to supernatural forces in hopes of finding favor or explaining their suffering. New religious movements and cults also began to gain followers, as some Greeks turned away from the traditional gods in search of personal salvation or a different understanding of existence. Mystery cults, which offered secret rituals and promises of a blessed afterlife, gained popularity among those who sought solace from the harshness of life. These changes reflected a broader sense of spiritual disillusionment and the psychological toll that war had taken on Greek society. Part 6. The Lasting Impact and Legacy of War. The Peloponnesian War left Greece weakened and divided, marking the end of the golden age of the independent Greek city-states. The prolonged conflict sapped the resources, morale, and manpower of the Greek world, leaving it vulnerable to external threats. The eventual rise of Macedon under Philip II and his son Alexander the Great was made possible by the fractured state of Greece, as Macedon exploited the weakened, disunited city-states to expand its influence. For the Greeks, the Peloponnesian War served as a lesson in the dangers of imperial ambition, unchecked power, and internal strife. The war highlighted the fragility of alliances based on power rather than shared values, and it demonstrated how quickly a powerful city-state like Athens could fall when it overreached. The division between Athens and Sparta, two city-states that had once cooperated to repel Persia, was a poignant reminder of how mutual distrust and rivalry could destroy even the mightiest alliances. The cultural and intellectual responses to the war left a lasting legacy that shaped Western thought. The tragedies of the period, the philosophical inquiries of Socrates, and the historical writings of Thucydides offered insights into human nature, morality, and the consequences of ambition that continue to resonate. These works, born from the trauma of war, became a foundation for literature, philosophy, and history, providing future generations with valuable lessons on the complexities of conflict and the cost of power. Conclusion: war's enduring imprint on Greek society. The impact of war on ancient Greek society was deep and multifaceted. It reshaped the political landscape, altering alliances and weakening city-states. It transformed family life, disrupted economies, and influenced the